Eli5 are professional athletes typically banned from placing bets that are in favor of their own team themselves because they still have inside information about their team that other people may not have. For example, they may know that a star player who is listed as questionable is probably going to play, based on the way practice has been run or catching a conversation. Also, knowledge of the game plan may give them a heads up on yardage prop bets for players on the team. For example, if they know the game plan is to run the ball a lot, they could bet on their running back to get a lot of yards. A lot of these posts miss something. Athletes who bet on sports will lose. Some will lose big and go into serious debt. Once that happens, their creditors have leverage against them. With that leverage they can force them into outcomes they want. It's an avenue into fixing matches. It happens a lot more than you think, which is why sports leagues crack down on gambling so heavily. There's another reason not mentioned, although maybe this reason is changing. But gambling at all incurs the risk of becoming indebted to bookies. When gambling was almost strictly illegal, this could often lead to you being indebted to unsavory characters who could then force you to throw games so you could pay back the debt. That's why it has such a bad reputation in sports, because bets aren't that simple. You have bets like we'll win and beat the spread or not beat the spread. Like say the bet is, we'll win, but only by less than 3 points. So if there's a chance to win by more than that, they could do something that will make sure it doesn't happen. It gets very complicated with all the different types of bets being made. I could see situations where someone might overextend themselves or their teammates in some way that would trade short-term gain for long-term harm. Also, perception is an issue. Once it's known that you're placing bets, then you kind of have to assume you're placing all sorts of bets. It's not really in anyone's best interest to have players making any sort of bets on themselves. Casinos definitely don't want it, as the players would have insider info. Leagues don't want players jeopardizing the integrity of their sport or possibly going bankrupt gambling. In football, you have 5 days of practice in preparation for the next game. Every team goes in with a game plan, i.e. focus heavy on the run game and keep the clock running. Players can bet the over rushing yards and under total points. It's an unfair advantage. Let's use Pete Rose as an example. As a MGR, betting on your own team to win means you are willing to make managerial decisions to win your bet. Even though those decisions are a detriment to your team, like bringing in a reliever when they may need more rest. There is also the flip side of not betting. If I bet on myself to win with any regularity, me not betting on myself to win is tantamount to betting on myself to lose. This was one major rationale for Pete Rose being suspended from baseball for life. You nailed it in your opener. Players throwing games to win money has been a thing ever since the Chicago Black Sox scandal, where 8 players allegedly conspired with a gambling magnate something Rothstein to throw the 1919 WS in exchange for cash. Plus, if a player bets on his team to win every game but then suddenly doesn't place a bet prior to the upcoming game, other bettors might take that as a sign that the player doesn't believe his team will win and can influence other bettors accordingly. It's same as insider trading at companies. They know more than the general public, so they have an unfair advantage. It also could lead to shifty situations for players to try to collaborate and make money across teams. I thought about this the other day and realized that a team could sandbag the odds and then change the lineup or some other kind of manipulation. Or they could report injuries that aren't as bad as they say, etc. That's a good question. Marketing makes it harder to monitor, casts a shadow on the dark underbelly of society by our superheroes, star athletes. Maybe it will take precedent to woo go team. I don't know. That's a great question. I've always thought of that relative to the Pete Rose thing. I see absolutely no harm in an athlete betting on themselves or their team to win. Shows confidence, inside info and point shaving or throwing the game, etc. Easier to just not let them, but I'm sure it's easy enough to get around. Could just do it online or through a friend, etc. It also has to do with their connections within the league. They can't ask their associate friend on the other team to throw that they played together with last season. You wouldn't want your politician, who is supposed to represent you, getting a lot of financial incentives from, say, corporations and lobbyists, would you? My feelings on this are simple. Bet on what you want, but don't crap where you eat. In other words, don't bet on the sport you play. It might motivate the opposing party to lose the game by betting on its opponent winning, completely skewing the outcome. Because if they bet on themselves to win, they have an extra incentive to do anything to win, aka cheat.